This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, truth seekers and true crime junkies. Welcome back to another episode of Hit the Road Jack, Finding the Zodiac. I'd like to welcome to the show today Nolan Del Campo. Or not. Gotta love it. All right, well, we'll go ahead and get this started. He probably needs to climb back on. And I really just found this quote on a movie that I was watching, and of course there was war involved, but I thought in light of everything that's been going on with Iran that it was an interesting statement to say the rush of battle is often a potent and lethal addiction, for war is a drug, by Chris Hedges. And I can completely understand that in terms of people wanting something that somebody else has, whether it's resources or land or power in general.
Are you ready?
It does. Yeah,
Can we
we're
go?
here. Are you here?
Frozen.
What's that?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you. You might have to go out and come back in. I don't see your video at all. Anyways, so of course it's that time of the year again where we're all sitting down and looking at all the measures on the ballot and trying to decide who we're going to vote for Congress and such. And I really kind of despise all of the rhetoric in the mail that I get, because it's really just people hating on other people and calling other people out. But I thought there was a couple interesting things that we do know already based on the events and people who have been voted into politics. One of them that I thought was interesting was this Dr. Richard Pan for Congress, Truth, Science, and Public Health. And it says it's time to send a doctor to Congress. Well, the problem with that is that then they are the ones in control or having voting rights for us in regards to healthcare and other medical decisions, which I feel like you shouldn't be a doctor if you have any primary benefit for voting in a direction that benefits you and what you do. We did have some, oh, there you are. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it was stuck at 2 minutes 10 and you were frozen. So I missed about 2 minutes of the show.
Oh, I did a quote and then I kind of climbed into, some of this mailings that we're getting for the political arena and the people who are wanting to be voted, and some of the things that they're saying about one person while what they're saying about themselves, like Dr. Richard Pan for Congress, saying that it's time to send a doctor to Congress. And I feel like that we shouldn't have anybody who has a position in pharmaceutical companies or in medical care, or even a doctor for that matter, into Congress, who has the right to vote blanketly on things that affect us as a whole, right? I mean,
right. It's like insider trading, basically. It's got a vested interest in the outcome of the legislation.
Exactly. I'm glad you said that so well, because we had the one person in Congress, or I'm not sure if she was in the House or Congress, but she was out in Florida and was busted for frauding the Medicare system during COVID. And her family owns, I guess, hospitals or some type of I don't know if they're like urgent cares or what they are, but she
Medical
again,
facilities, basically.
yeah, medical facilities. And of course, she's then frauding COVID for millions of dollars and being indicted for that.
Why are
Just
people so
the
crooked, man? There's some
what's
greedy
that?
people. People are so
Right.
greedy.
So while this guy says it's time to send the doctor to Congress, a trusted pediatrician who will stand up for science, protect families, and safeguard the health of our communities is then bashing on the other side. RFK Jr. is systematically undermining vaccine science and endangering health. Well, vaccine science? I mean, how is it that he undermines it? He doesn't believe that we should be putting it in our body because anything we're putting into our body that isn't natural isn't good for us. I mean, at what point do you determine that it's undermining it? I don't know.
Well, he's pretty out there when it comes to those issues.
Who is?
RFK Jr.
And what do you mean out there?
His views aren't widely accepted in the scientific community.
What is he against or for it?
He's totally against vaccines, and I don't know why. I mean, they've been proven to be helpful. That's why we have them.
Well, to certain people.
But here's the other deal too. Forced vaccination that's a whole different story.
Right.
But if there's like a pandemic or epidemic or major thing, then I'm almost for it, because if it helps the greater good to stop, nip something in the bud rather than having, because a few didn't get vaxxed, if they choose not to, then they should stay home.
Well, I know my brother's doctor kept pushing for it. So he's a CHP officer, and his doctor kept pushing him for it, and he refused to take it. And then I think just a few months ago, he saw his doctor again, and his doctor prophetically apologized for ever having suggested that he take it. So there's a big flip, right? From you should to I am sorry I ever attempted to push you into doing that. I was completely wrong. That was some interesting news. Another one is this: Steve Hilton is Donald Trump's handpicked candidate for governor. And they're going on about supporting radical Department of Government efficiency, cutting government services. But in reality, shouldn't we be cutting some stuff? Aren't we actually, a lot of money is going to areas and to agencies that aren't actively doing anything for us, or they're overstaffed and we're paying for nothing? I mean, there does need to be some cuts.
There's a lot of waste, although most of it is where they're spending the most money, and that's on military industrial complex and government contracts.
Right.
So where they're trying to cut is the programs for the poorest people, for the have-nots. They're not trying to cut the haves, and that's where the most waste is, and that's where the most money is. So,
and then
I do agree. There's a lot of inefficiency and waste, but I think we have to be very careful about where we make the cuts.
Right, but I do think that there's a lot of waste, and you see it time and time again with some of these government officials. They're sitting at their desk on their phone, on the computer. Like, what are you doing? What's your job? Why aren't you working?
There's a story in today's B, the lead story about this developer out in the north area who's they call it the River District, I guess, which is just another name for the big homeless area. And they're going to do a big development out there. And the guy got grants, federal and state and local, for up to like almost $9 million. But they come in really slowly. But his contractors and all these other people want to get paid every month. So he's talking about abandoning the whole project and losing out on all that funding. And so it's go figure there. And then they send him to private banks, and the banks told him, well, if you could put up the collateral in cash, then we'll loan you whatever you want. And he says, well, if I had the money in collateral, I wouldn't need a loan.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this one goes on to say about Steve Hilton falsely accused Democrats of rigging elections like Donald Trump does, which I found kind of interesting because Newsom literally stated, I'm going to redistrict because that's what Trump did. So he literally did. And these people say falsely accusing Democrats of doing this. It's not false. We watched Newsom do it. It literally was his retaliation for what he believes Trump was doing. But I thought the bigger part of this, or the more hilarious part of this, is that they keep going Republican, Republican, and against Democrat in all of this rhetoric. And honestly speaking, we know Trump was a former Democrat, and I was just told that Steve Hilton was also a Democrat too.
No, he just saw his best chance as being Republican and getting backing from Trump. That way he'd get all the right wingers in California. And the way the primary works is it's the two highest vote getters. It's not the top Democrat, top Republican like most primaries. It's the two highest vote getters. Well, there's so many Democrats in the race that they're stealing votes from each other. And that's why Hilton is tied for the lead. But I think at least one Democrat, I think Becerra is going to get in the runoff against Hilton, but I'm pretty sure Hilton for sure is going to make it. And I think
I just find it interesting that they're calling them Republicans when they're at heart not Republicans. Neither Trump or Hilton are Republicans; they're Democrats.
If he gets elected as a Republican, he's going to have to go with that agenda. Otherwise, he'll turn his back on Trump, and that's not. If you're Republican, that's not a good thing to do. Even if it's a nominal Republican.
Right. Well, I think that is probably, of the hate rhetoric that's going around, all I have on my desk for that. Now, I was contacted by another individual just a few days ago in regards to Gary Post, which is one of the suspects, or one of the more recent false suspects that was claimed to have been the Zodiac killer, because he purportedly admitted it at some point, or stated that he was. And so I had a really long conversation, a couple hours with this guy, and I started to take notes, which lasted about 2 sentences, and then realized that there was nothing of value there for me to talk about. So his belief, because he says he personally met and knew and had hung out a bit with Post, that he had driven a friend's or a brother's brown Mustang, he said. And I said, I've never heard of a Mustang being involved with the Zodiac. Yeah.
Where does the suspect live, or where did he live?
Oh gosh.
If it wasn't Texas or California, then it's not the right suspect.
Well, it's California, but he was up in like Groveland, I want to say he was saying. It's
that's
somewhere.
By Yosemite.
Yes. And so he was going on about how he had all the law enforcement scared, and that he ran a group of teenagers doing his bidding and intimidating people. And I'm like, that's not Zodiac-like at all.
No,
and
that's more Manson.
Would you be putting yourself out there as a cult leader for teenagers if you were truly the Zodiac and trying to stay under the radar? Like, no, it absolutely makes no sense.
It doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
No, and everything he had to say, I obviously had something to point in a different direction. We know Post was probably about 30 years of age during the Zodiac crimes, which was one of the reasons I excluded him, not only because he doesn't look like the Zodiac composite, but because he was 30 when the police officer said we were looking for somebody between the ages of 35 and 45. So right. Pushing it to an older limit. And again, he didn't look anything like the composite, nor did he ever need or require glasses. This guy actually tried to take his argument to the point by saying, well, I'm vain and I don't always wear my glasses. I need them, but I often leave them at home because I'm vain. Well, the Zodiac needed them. We don't take extra accoutrements to a crime scene that we're going to have to collect, keep, or hopefully not break or lose during the process of that crime. You don't bring a bunch of extra things with you. You're not dragging the kitchen sink.
You absolutely need them, and he needed them to see properly, because to execute these very sophisticated crimes, he had to be precise.
Yes. And he couldn't quite wrap his mind around it. And at the end, the resolve was, I asked him, could he get any handwriting? So he was pushing this author of a book that he knew. He kept saying, and I said, but this guy, if he wrote a book and attempted to make money off of a false suspect, I said, then that's nothing more than Hollyweird to me. And he's like, I don't understand what you mean. I said, affiliation with anything related to news, media, Hollywood, any of that. If these people are coming from that genre and then making a book about a false suspect, I said, I discount and I distrust anything that they're putting out. And at first he was trying to tell me, oh no, that's not who this guy is. In fact, they really ran him down, all these people. And then he pops up and says he used to be a journalist. I was like, bingo.
Yeah.
He couldn't.
Yeah,
He
people
couldn't
get on tangents and they don't want to get off them.
Yeah, he sounded like I mean, I don't know what makes people think I'm the bleeding heart for listening to every, story that they have in regards to their revolving around, somebody they think is the Zodiac, or why they think I'm the person. I mean, he clearly told me just out of the gate, he understood I had my own suspect, but he also understands that I do believe that there's a group theory. I don't see this guy being part of the group at all. I mean, running a gang of teenagers makes no sense. Anyway, so we are back to Tom.
This guy became personally invested in his suspect. He doesn't want to back off it.
Right. Literally, yeah. It's his experience. He, wants to be his part in it, and having known this person, and he wants to share that with people. And I was extremely interested. Like I said, I got out the notepad. I was ready to start taking notes. He was making it sound like, don't, this is confidential. I don't want anybody to know. So it revolved around his sister, where she lived next door to Post, this, that, and the other. Like, the second that he started getting into the information, there was nothing there to protect or to hide. There was nothing that he said that would be considered confidential.
How does his sister feel? And if she believes him, why isn't she moved?
Well, I guess they're not next to him anymore at this point. I want to say that this was when they were in Alameda County. So that's where he was. Post was living in Alameda County when he met him, but I don't have anything for Alameda County as far as murders or anything.
That's near the Zodiac area, though. I mean, that's
it's near.
Yeah,
right. It's near.
And it's in between San Francisco and San Jose.
Right.
So we have Jack in San Jose, but
I just when I looked at the
region, it's in the greater region, but we don't have any specific ties.
Right. Well, back to what we had on Tom Voight's site. We're at 1974, and it says the Zodiac resurfaced in 1974 when he wrote a series of letters to the Chronicle over a period of 6 months, and with postmarks from around the Bay Area. Though ultimately identified through analysis of the envelopes and handwriting, these 4 letters were different from the others in that the author had abandoned his usual salutation, "This is the Zodiac speaking," and signature, the cross circle design. The first was sent on January 29th from Sunnyvale, California, and referred to the recently released movie The Exorcist as the best satirical comedy that I'd ever seen. It also included a quote from the Mikado about a bird who commits suicide because the one it loves won't pay it attention, and an inscrutable drawing that resembled a hieroglyph of some sort. It says, and this is The Exorcist's letter, "I saw and think The Exorcist was the best satirical comedy that I have ever seen. Signed, yours truly." He plunged himself into the billowy wave, and an echo rose from the suicide's grave. "Titwillow, Titwillow, Titwillow. P.S. If I do not see this note in your paper, I will do something nasty, which you know I'm capable of doing. Me," now he's claiming 37 victims, and SFPD 0, because they've not caught him. Yeah. A couple side notes in regards to this. We covered it back in 1974, but Jack had just gone to see the Exorcist movie in December before this letter was actually written. So he went on a double date, him and Nora and his brother and his brother's either wife or girlfriend at that time. They went on a double date and watched The Exorcist, and Dennis had the recollection of it because Jack was really enjoying this whole Exorcist movie. Yeah. Another note, because he's taken a 3-year break at this point, the Zodiac has, and that has been attributed to Danny Reynolds when he went to CYA, and Dennis believes that Danny took the rap for something that Jack was ultimately responsible for, and that's why Jack went back and picked him up when he got out of CYA in January of 1974. And this letter being mailed from Sunnyvale, which is near the Pleasanton area where the last postcard was, and that was Jack also addressing Danny Reynolds' needs. But Jack went and picked Danny Reynolds up in 1974 from CYA and brought him back to his house with Nora. So here's Dennis and the other kids, and this stepson from his previous marriage has now been picked up by CYA and brought back to their home in South Lake Tahoe. Now, I don't see that as being a coincidence.
Right. Also, the Mikado references are present in the earlier Zodiac communications.
100%.
And at the time of the Paul Stein murder, I believe there was a production of the Mikado going on in San Francisco, active.
Right. There's and I think maybe even at the Presidio, I don't really recall what was going on. I don't know if that was Dr. Zodiac, or I think I want to say it was the Mikado that was being played though.
Yeah, the Mikado was in San Francisco. I'm not sure where, but at the time of, I think, the Paul Stein murder, it was still active production, I believe.
Right. Well, here's a visual, and this looks like a really good high quality scan, albeit not in color, but I mean, you can see literally this is the sign off here instead of doing the crosshair circles. But I think that this was related to a sake barrel that was found on one of the Santa Rosa victims. This was some type of a emblem that they said could potentially have been from that. So that might have tied in. And in this, we get to see these dots, that the heavy period dotting and these lines that are coming from it. We seen that in one of the letters that Robert Graysmith had produced in his book. And then when he reproduced the next book, he actually had that document, he claims, cleaned up, that the printer had done that. When it was printing the book, it accidentally made this mess, or these dots and all this stuff that Dennis claimed was legitimately on the original letter. And then Graysmith had it removed, claiming that it was a printing problem. I see this on many of the letters.
Why would Graysmith do that? I mean, if he's after the truth, why would you do something like that?
Well, it was Dennis believed that he also changed some of the bell top A's that was in that letter. So in doing so, he removed other artifacts that were actively, created by the Zodiac. And so when he cleaned the letter up, he used that as an excuse to say, oh, it just printed that way because the printer was bad. Well, usually when a printing press is printing a book, it's going to pop up on more than one page if that's happening, not just that letter throughout the entire book.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to have it in more.
It seems like an odd justification by Graysmith.
Right. Well, so he goes in and says,
what does that Zodiac communication say? The whole thing. Okay. I've seen it.
Wait, I just read it.
Oh, okay.
It says, I saw and think The Exorcist was the best satirical comedy. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, you read it from the other version. Okay. All right.
Right. So it goes on to say, in addition to a single 8-cent Eisenhower stamp, the Zodiac had placed on the envelope 2 USPS stickers. One bore a picture of a clock set to 12:55 or 11:05 with the advice to mail early in the day, and the other was a reminder to use the recently introduced zip code. Probably from the same packet, the killer also stuck 2 short paragraphs about the stamps and their packaging. Stamps in this book have been gummed with matte finish adhesive, which permits the elimination of the separation tissues. This book contains 25 8-cent stamps, 4 on this pane and 7 each on 3 additional panes. Selling price $2. So that he actually, for whatever reason, posted that. So why don't we see that on the envelope? Where's this envelope that shows this stuff? Although this letter fell under brief suspicion as a possible forgery in mid-1978, it was verified as genuine by a panel of handwriting analysts from various agencies throughout California. You're darn straight it is. I mean, come on.
I mean, at first glance, it looks like it, and then upon further study, it confirms it.
Right. Yeah, there was just too many things that were consistent with the handwriting and the linguistics and the way that it was all put together. It goes on to say all of the killer's letters had been written or typed on varying stocks and brands of odd-sized paper. The edges had been trimmed with industrial rather than personal or office-type paper cutters. The only dimensions given for any document were for this letter, which measures 17 centimeters by 24 centimeters, the same configuration as the 3-part cryptogram with 17 columns and 24 rows.
Interesting.
I find it interesting that he claims that the only dimensions given for any document, he says, was this letter, when in reality they've known that the letters that the Zodiac wrote on were 5x7s, approximately 5x7s in size.
I think Terry Batcher would have a take on that, on the numerology.
Right? Yes, he would. But to tell the viewers of his website that the dimensions given for any document was only this one is completely untrue, because I then think that's what allowed him to manipulate these letters, blow them up to 8.5 by 11 by widening and lengthening the pixel width and height, so that it again is not providing the truth to the viewers.
And by saying that, he's giving this one more significance than the others, and
Right.
they're all significant.
And they're all approximately the same size. So
Yeah.
The next letter, whose postmark is unclear in published photographs, was mailed from San Francisco, arrived at the Chronicle on February 14th, 1974, 7 days after the Symbionese Liberation Army had kidnapped Patty Hearst. Is this a coincidence? The SLA letter being mailed from the Zodiac and the abduction of Patty Hearst, the daughter of the media magnate for, you said the Examiner, right? San Francisco Examiner?
San Francisco's the Examiner, not the Chronicle. Yeah. But also he had an LA paper and papers across the country.
Yeah.
Why would he? For one of his papers, and then he syndicated her across the country.
Right. This letter, it was transcribed by the Chronicle in August of 1976. Dear Mr. Editor, did you know that the initials SLA, Symbionese Liberation Army, spell SLA? The word SLA is written in script, an Old Norse word meaning kill, and then signed off a friend. So the sign-off was definitely consistent with other sign-offs that we've seen. A citizen in the Sherry Jo Bates case, right? One of the letters was signed off a concerned citizen. So we see these kind of cryptic sign-offs. He goes on to say the terms Old Norse and Old Icelandic refer to the same tongue, but there is debate among scholars over which is more appropriate. Some use the former in respect to the language's Norwegian origins, but most use the latter because most of the surviving texts were written in Iceland. Garth Penn, a former student of medieval literature and historical linguistics, points out that the Nordic SLA in fact means to strike, and goes on to list the English language dictionaries, which name it as a cognate of the English slay without giving its original definition, and with Norse rather than Icelandic named as the original tongue. Webster's Third International Chambers Dictionary, the Oxford English Dictionary, and the Oxford Dictionary of English Etymology, and Eric Partridge's Origins are all scholarly, not popular, writes Penn, who suggests that the gleaning of this misinformation came as the result of a higher education than the SFPD and armchair profilers everywhere had attributed to the Zodiac. So, again, making him intelligent, right?
Yeah,
he obviously,
I would agree with that take.
I would too. So here's that letter. And of course, I've done the handwriting on this one as well. I've identified this as well as something from the Zodiac. But when it talks about the Symbionese Liberation Army, at the time I'm looking at this letter, I was completely unaware of the fact that they were the people who actually abducted Patty Hearst.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they claim they brainwashed her, MK Ultra'd her, you know.
Well, Sin Q, a.k.a. Donald DeFreeze, the leader of the SLA, he was trained in brainwashing techniques while in prison.
Oh. How do you get trained in that stuff while in prison?
Because at Vacaville, they had a program going on funded by the CIA that brought this professor in. I think he was a professor, I don't know if it was UCLA, but maybe Berkeley. Anyway, they brought him in to work with the students at Vacaville. And part of what he was doing was mind control experiments. And one of his top pupils was Donald DeFreeze, who later became Sin Q.
So the CIA paid for this guy to go in and actually teach our criminals how to do this stuff?
Well, not all of them. Mainly he was experimenting on most of them. But some of them he took under his wing. And I think there was a purpose behind that, because later the SLA, is my theory, is that they were a front operation for their MK Ultra type of thing to help, same with like Manson, to help discredit both the counterculture and the hippie movements and basically the counterculture.
Ah.
And any kind of like quasi-revolutionary Because at first, even though the SLA was doing really bad things, kidnap and murder, but their goals were like feeding poor youth and things like that, education, nourishment, things like that. They had very lofty goals, but their methods were crazy.
So they're like Robin Hood, right?
Yeah, but way worse.
Way worse. Well, I'm pretty sure Robin Hood killed some people.
Used those techniques on Patty Hearst. That's part of why she got away with her role in it, because her lawyer, which became F. Lee Bailey, who's also very familiar with mind control, he was the lawyer in the Boston Strangler case, and he was also involved at the OJ trial.
The partner of Melvin Belli, who the Zodiac wrote.
Yeah. So Bailey, he's been around forever, and that was her lawyer, and he was able to convince the prosecutors, the judge, and the jury that she was a victim of mind control herself.
How long would it take to do something like that? I mean, how long did they have her?
The book I read says they would lock her in a closet for hours on end, and then when she'd come out, she would just be hungry, thirsty, and deprived. And then it was crazy. There was a lot of different weird tactics they used on her, but
how long did they keep her?
She was with them a while, through the bank. She was there in a bank robbery, carrying a machine gun. She was with them quite a while.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, until she was with them. From the time she was kidnapped to the time they all went down, she was still with them. She and some other people had kind of fled to a little safe house, and that's why they survived when they got raided, and a lot of them got killed.
Oh, so she was one of the people that didn't get killed.
Of course, yeah. But then she got arrested. She got arrested, and F. Lee Bailey was her lawyer.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's all one nice little web. That's for sure.
In Sirhan, the guy that's in prison for the alleged murder of Robert Kennedy, he, in his book that they found, RFK must die, very evidence of like hypnosis. And part of what he writes in there is DeSalvo. And Albert DeSalvo is the guy that got convicted as the Boston Strangler. But F. Lee Bailey was involved there too. So who knows if he did it or not, but I don't know if he got convicted or pled guilty. But F. Lee Bailey's been around a lot of cases that have involved mind control and hypnosis.
That's very interesting. It kind of reminds me of these people who play these roles on movies where it requires in-depth knowledge about the person they're going to portray and what they have to learn. So that person continues to play those same type of roles over and over again, so as to not let this information be known by too many different actors, right? Like, we're going to just keep using these people to do it. That would be my thought in regards to F. Lee Bailey. If he is literally handling all of these cases, he's getting inside information that no other person is getting. So let's just keep making him the attorney on these types of cases.
Same with Belli.
Yeah. And they're partners. So,
well, they worked on certain cases together, but they had their own separate practices.
I was under the impression that they were partners at some point.
No, they had some affiliation, and there's some cases that they both worked on, but they weren't officially law partners.
I know that one of F. Lee Bailey ended up being disbarred, right?
Did he? I don't recall that.
Yeah, and I believe that his partner is I'm not going to recall his name right now, but he's the one that ended up on the steps of the Chronicle with Deborah Perez as a false suspect, claiming her adopted dad was the Zodiac, and he was as well. I think he was her PR person, if I remember correctly. He was a former partner of F. Lee Bailey's, and he was disbarred attorney as well. Some of the information I found out during that time. So Next letter. 3 months later, on May 8th, another letter was sent, this time from Fremont, about 25 miles south of San Francisco across the bay. It expressed consternation at newspaper ads for the movie Badlands, which was inspired by spree murderers Charles Starkweather and Carol Ann Fugate. It arrived in a pre-stamped envelope, unlike any other known Zodiac letter. Sirs, I would like to express my consternation concerning your poor taste and lack of sympathy for the public, as evidenced by your running of the ads for the movie Badlands, featuring the blurb, "In 1959, most people were killing time. Kit and Holly were killing people. In light of recent events, this kind of murder glorification can only be deplorable at best. Not that glorification of violence was ever justifiable. Why don't you show some concern for public sensibilities and cut the ad? A citizen." Is that like the Zodiac smacking their hands? Like, you shouldn't be glorifying murder when that's exactly what Zodiac is attempting to do by getting all of his stuff printed in the paper.
So you're right. F. Lee Bailey did get disbarred. He was admitted in both Massachusetts and what's the other state? Maine and Florida. Well, actually, he tried to get admitted in Maine. He didn't make it. The bar wouldn't have him. But Florida, and he got disbarred in both states. And later he tried to get into the bar in Maine, but they denied him based on prior conduct. Not because he didn't pass the exam, but based on prior conduct. But it doesn't say anywhere here on the Wikipedia site that he was a partner of Belli. They were cohorts, but they weren't official law partners.
Gotcha.
But the thing is, he was not licensed to practice in California, yet Patty Hearst's case and the OJ case are both California cases.
Right.
So I don't know how he got around that. I think in the OJ, I think what the rule is if you get affiliated with a practicing California licensed attorney and you became part of that team, then you're good to go. So maybe with Patty Hearst, there was some other nominal guy that was a California lawyer that he got to affiliate with, which allowed him to represent Patty Hearst. But otherwise, unless you're admitted in a particular state, you can't practice in that state.
Right.
I can't practice in Nevada. I can't practice in Florida.
Well, is that kind of like when you become a paralegal, you could operate on your own, but under the guise or supervision of a licensed attorney? So you basically have to turn over all your work and make sure that that attorney agrees with what it is that you're doing in order for you to actively produce or do that work for the public?
Yes, I believe so.
So kind of that scenario right there, right? As long as you have somebody supervising.
Yeah.
Maybe that
just means that there's someone that's ultimately responsible along with you. It's like co-signing, when someone buys a car, that if something goes wrong, not only Bailey would get punished, but Cochran would get punished too, or, Kardashian or whatever.
I did find it interesting when you're looking through these letters, especially the citizen letter that Voight is talking about. When you compare that to the Winovich letter from 2000, a lot of the things that you see happening in this letter is definitely considered consistent. And of course, this one is also mentioning citizens. So there's some cross connectivity here. I see that there, again, are these Belltop A's that we were talking about that Dennis had felt that Robert Graysmith ended up removing from the letters. And I don't know when he suspects that he did that, but it was somewhere between the first and second book, because the second book did not portray that same letter the same way.
Okay. Interesting. So he's changing up his books. That's crazy. Because I haven't read the first one. I read the second one.
I haven't read any of them.
Zodiac Unmasked is the one I read.
I think I searched through just to find the victims so that I could look them up and research the victims for the presentation. But other than that, I did not actively read that book at all.
And like the movie, it's very on point in regard to the commission of the crimes themselves. Where it strays is on making Arthur Lee Allen. Arthur Lee Allen is the primary suspect. And basically he concludes that he was Zodiac. But then the weird part about it, I think we talked about it a little last week, is he starts out the book by calling the suspect Kenneth Starr.
Bob Starr or Robert Starr.
Robert Starr. So Ringo Starr. I don't know. Something Starr.
And Starr. That's I don't even know that that's a legit name.
Yeah.
But so whatever.
Anyway, it's weird. Why would you do that? Why not just cut to the chase? Why make up a fake character? And then he goes on to describe Arthur Lee Allen and what he's doing at the time, where he lived at the time, blah, 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 using this pseudonym.
I think because he knew that he was wrong and he didn't want to get sued, right? He didn't want to get sued for slander or defamation, probably.
Yeah, but later they go to Arthur Lee Allen. But for the last
all the way through 2007, I'm sure he was probably one of the consultants along with Tom Voight on that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the next letter, the final letter
was a consultant. I mean, it's based on his books.
Right.
And he's like the main character. He's the Jake Gyllenhaal character.
Oh, yes. Robert Graysmith?
Yeah.
The final letter for 1974, it is postmarked in San Rafael on July 8th, 1974. The return address on the envelopes was simply RP. In a looping, obviously disguised script, it was an attack on the conservative Chronicle columnist Count Marco. And it says, editor, put Marco back in the hellhole from whence it came. He has a serious psychological disorder, always needs to feel superior. I suggest you refer him to a shrink. Meanwhile, cancel the Count Marco column. Since the Count can write anonymously, so can I. The Red Phantom, red with rage. I know it says Red Phantom, but RP could also, I think that they called the Riverside Phantom for the Sherry Joe Bates stuff. So kind of a double play there. Yep. It says San Francisco police have not verified a Zodiac letter since 1974. That's a complete lie. Now, this says circa 1998, 1999. This is well after the 1986 letter that Terrence Pascow confirms that while it was not shown to the public, it was definitely decided upon having been the Zodiac's writing, and he claimed plus or minus 100 victims across Nevada and California. Well, he says 100 plus. If I'm reading the hyphen to just mean what the hyphen means, then he's saying 100 plus murders all over California and Nevada.
Okay, where did that letter go to? Who received it?
Which one? This one?
The latest one, the 86 one.
Oh, that one went to Sacramento.
And why wasn't it ever revealed? Why didn't they publish it? Or
I think they didn't want us to know that he was still out there killing.
That's wild.
Yeah. Dennis gave it to me. It was the first time I hadn't really seen any letters other than what Bart Baggett provided to me, which he got, I'm sure, from Tom Voight. But he provided it to me, and then had explained to me the size of the letters were actually 5x7, really just kind of to refute what Bart Baggett said, that the handwriting on the letters were too large to be Jack. And of course, they were presented to me as 8.5 by 11s. And Dennis said they were not that size. They were more the size of a 5x7. So I made him take me to Terrence Pascow's house here in Sacramento to meet with Terrence Pascow, to ask him questions about the size of the letters, which he confirmed they were all approximately 5x7. And that the 1986 letter was, in fact, a Zodiac letter. The document examiners on the case at the time had determined that it had been written by the Zodiac, which I concur myself after my own examination. But I needed that information to be told to me by somebody other than Dennis for it to be accepted. And I was capable of getting that done. And actually, Dennis shouldn't even have had that letter. He told me he literally walked out of Terrence Pascow's house with it. So he had approached Terrence Pascow requesting that he looked at Jack's handwriting to determine whether or not Jack was the Zodiac's, the author of the Zodiac Communications. And he says that Terrence Pascow told him, I think, 85% match. We don't do percentages, so I don't know why Terrence Pascow would ever say 85% match. But Dennis took advantage. I guess Pascow had stepped out of the room for a second, and Dennis swiped that letter. So it was the first time probably making it out of the hands of a document examiner.
Okay.
The 1978 letter. So this is a, let's see. Well, we've got about 3 minutes. I can either read this or we could just discuss what we just did.
It's up to you. We got like 4 minutes. Why don't you try and get through it?
Oh, I guess you're right. We started a few minutes late. I forgot about that. Okay. The 1978 letter. On April 24th, 1978, a letter to the San Francisco Chronicle was mailed from either Santa Clara or San Mateo County by someone very familiar with the Zodiac's case and literature. Although this letter was initially thought to be genuine, and though some continue to believe that it was, in fact, the killer's final message to the citizens of the Bay Area, the modern consensus among law enforcement agents and most researchers is that the letter was counterfeit. Absolutely not true. The handwriting on the envelope was recognized by a copy person at the newspaper, and the letter made its way almost immediately to journalist Duffy Jennings. Jennings had taken over the Zodiac beat from Paul Avery, who was now at the San Francisco Examiner. After immediately preserving his scoop with photographs of both the letter and its envelope, Jennings phoned Inspector David Toschi, the only detective working San Francisco's end of the Zodiac case. Toschi was out serving subpoenas, so Jennings had hand-delivered the originals to Hall of Justice, where they were routed instead to Deputy Chief of Police Clem D. Amicus. The letter read, "Dear editor, this is the Zodiac speaking. I am back with you. Tell Herb Cain I am here. I've always been here. That city pig, Toschi, is good, but I am..." Oh, he crossed out, started to write a word. "Smarter and better. He will get tired, then leave me alone. I'm waiting for a good movie about me. Who will play me? I am now in control of all things. Yours truly," the crosshair circle, the number of victims says guess, and again, SFPD 0. It says, when Toschi arrived back at headquarters, he was summoned directly to the Amicus's office, where the two men conferred, and Toschi was granted custody of the letter. Sherwood Morrill, the former State Bureau of Criminal Identification and Investigation handwriting expert that had authenticated most of the Zodiac letters for Toschi and the SFPD, had by now retired, and Toschi's first move was to call John Shimoda of the U.S. Postal Service Crime Lab to confirm the Zodiac's authorship. It is unclear why Toschi called Shimoda rather than the current chief of the state's question document section, Robert Prouty. In any case, Shimoda confirmed it as the Zodiac's handiwork, and Toschi delivered the letter to a fingerprint expert at SFPD Crime Lab, who found no trace of prints or any other useful evidence on the single page or its envelope. So let's keep that in mind, because Shimoda comes back at another point in time, I think, and declares it as a forgery. So it's interesting to see in 1998, 99 from Tom Voight's site that Shimoda confirmed it as Zodiac's handiwork.
And the MO is authentic too. No prints.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Is that the same letter that some people thought Toschi actually wrote?
Yes, he got accused of right. There was actually 2 letters in 78. I want to say one April, one May, but I don't know that I have the date on one of them, but they're definitely from 78. They're very consistent with each other. In fact, it's almost like one of the, triplicate forms of a communication that he sent, like when he sent the 3-part cipher with the same exact letter and response to Vallejo Times Herald, Chronicle, and the Examiner. So here we have 2 mimicking letters that basically are saying about the same thing. And Toschi gets accused of having written, I think he had written somebody touting himself or pontificating about himself to get some type of recognition. And so somehow they construed these new letters to be his way to get back into the limelight. So he must have forged them so that he could get more action. I don't know.
But ultimately, he was cleared of responsibility.
Yes. Yeah. It was not written by him. So it goes on to say, in order to fully understand the controversy that still surrounds this letter, we must take a look at its context. At the time of its receipt at the Chronicle, Inspector Toschi, a 25-year veteran of the San Francisco Police Department, was probably the most high-profile law enforcement agent in the Bay Area. While the charismatic Toschi had many supporters in city government and the local media, he had also made his share of enemies who felt that his flashy demeanor and his yen for publicity were unprofessional and could lead to a conflict of interest. Further, rumor around City Hall had it that Supervisor Dianne Feinstein would tap him as police chief in her bid for the mayor's seat, and this would certainly mark him as a threat to SFPD Chief Charles Gaine and his deputy, Clem D'Amicus. In the fall of 1976, the local author and columnist Armistead Maupin had written a serial for the Chronicle about a fictitious SFPD detective chasing an unknown killer similar to the Zodiac. The story's protagonist, Inspector Tandy, received advice and mentoring in the serial from none other than Tashi. At about this time, Maupin received 3 note cards from what appeared to be private citizens complimentary to Tashi and urging that he appear more often in the story. So this is what I was saying. This is what Tashi did do. A good journalist, Maupin, attempted to verify the notes and found that the names did not belong to San Francisco residents. Tashi was well known for the short notes he sent to various Tashi was well known for the short notes he sent to various reporters and politicians, and Maupin began to suspect that it was he who had sent the cards. Seeing them as harmless, if not entirely honest, Maupin kept the notes under wraps until April of 1978, when the only Zodiac letter to mention Tashi by name arrived at his newspaper, sparking suspicions that Tashi had graduated to something akin to fraud, counterfeiting a Zodiac letter. Maupin and the agent he had hired to publicize an unrelated book approached Sergeant Jack O'Shea, head of the SFPD intelligence unit, with their suspicions. O'Shea and Tashi's bosses, Lieutenant Jack Jordan, head of the Homicide Bureau, determined that Tashi had written the fan letters, but both men would eventually be disciplined, O'Shea more severely for not reporting this knowledge immediately. Wow. Chief Gaine has said that he was not told of Tashi's phony letters until late June of 1978, but the late April transfer of 2 detectives from Special Investigations and the Gang Task Force to the Zodiac case may have been a sign that Tashi was already under suspicion as the author of the latest letter. Exactly what transpired within the Hall of Justice is unknown. But on July 10th, Chief Gaine held a press conference to announce 2.
He did a very good job on Zodiac.
What's that?
He did a terrible job on the Zodiac case.
Right. Tashi. We wasn't meant to figure it out. If there's other people controlling the flow, if there's other people, let's say plants in the police department controlling the flow of information and what's allowed to be investigated or allowed to be found out, then what chance did he really have?
And he, because he had such an attitude and a high sense of self, San Francisco basically seized control of the investigation at the detriment to Vallejo police.
Oh my gosh, we are way over right now. Okay, I just kept on going. I'm sorry, you guys. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for being here, Nolan. We'll pick this up where we left off. This was a great conversation. Everybody take care and peace.